Pittsburgh, 3:17 a.m., February 1944. The steel mills never sleep, but tonight the only light in Rossi's Italian bakery on Penn Avenue is the red glow of the coal oven. Gino Rossi, 34, broad-shouldered, flour in his hair like fresh snow, slides a wooden peel under a loaf that weighs exactly 4.2 pounds. To any neighbor peeking through the frosted window, it's just another pane di casa for the morning rush. But if you could cut that loaf open right now, you'd find a core of pale yellow Composition B explosive wrapped in wax paper, enough to blow a German half-track sky high. One loaf, one bridge, one step closer to bringing his cousins home from the Apennines. Gino wipes sweat with the back of a wrist, scarred from a childhood accident with a dough mixer. His wife Maria is asleep upstairs with their 2 boys, dreaming of Sunday gravy. Down here, Gino dreams in grams and ounces, 60% TNT, 40% RDX, 1% wax to keep it stable at 400 degrees Fahrenheit bake temp. He whispers the old Neapolitan prayer his nonna taught him. Pane nostro quotidiano, ma stasera è pane di libertà, and slides the loaf into the oven. Timer: 22 minutes. In 22 minutes, the crust will harden just enough to survive a 2,000-foot parachute drop. In 22 minutes, Gino Rossi, third-generation baker from the Hill District, becomes an OSS saboteur. The bell above the door jingles, soft, prearranged. A man in a fedora steps in, collar up against the Allegheny wind. "Package for Naples," he says, sliding a small tin of black food coloring across the counter. Inside, detonator pencils no thicker than linguini. Gino nods once. No names. The OSS calls it Operation Ciabatta. Gino calls it Tuesday. Chapter 2. The Call from OSS, Recipe for Resistance, 4 minutes plus 45 seconds, 625 words, loop. What if your Sunday loaf could stop a panzer? 6 weeks earlier, Christmas Eve 1943, Gino is closing up when a black Hudson pulls to the curb. Out steps Major Peter Tompkins, OSS Italian desk, still smelling of North African dust. "Mr. Rossi, the partisans in the Gothic line are starving for 2 things, bread and bang. We can give them both, if you can bake it." Tompkins lays photos on the marble counter. Mountain drop zones ringed in red. German supply trains crawling like ants. Weckstein's book later records the math. 7 Wehrmacht divisions, 120,000 men, tied down by 200,000 ragged partisans who own the night but lose the day without explosives. One C-47 can drop 6,000 pounds. One baker can hide 1,200 pounds of that in 300 loaves. "Do the numbers, Gino." Gino does. His bakery turns out 800 loaves daily. Hide 4 loaves per crate, 75 crates per pallet, 4 pallets per plane. One flight feeds a brigade and blows 3 bridges. He thinks of his cousin Luca, last letter smudged with blood. "Send anything that burns, cousin. Even your burnt ends." Tompkins offers cover. Rossi's Bakery, official supplier to Fort Indiantown Gap. Requisition forms, ration stamps, midnight deliveries. Gino signs with fountain pen ink that smells like anise. Maria finds him at dawn, eyes red. "They want me to weaponize Nonna's recipe." She kisses his forehead. "Then make it the best weapon Nonna ever tasted." Training starts in the basement. How to knead plastique without air pockets. How to proof dough at 98 degrees Fahrenheit so the explosive doesn't sweat. How to score the crust with a razor so the loaf splits exactly on impact, exposing the fuse. By January, Gino can bake a bomb that passes the grandma squeeze test. soft enough for a partisan child to carry, hard enough to survive a drop from 800 feet. He ships the first test batch in crates labeled alimentary paste for Allied POWs. The OSS Cableback, Ciabatta, arrived intact. Bridges 14, 17, and 19 now singing arias in the river. Gino hangs the cable above the oven like a papal blessing. The smell of yeast and cordite becomes the new normal, and every night before the 3 a.m. bake, he asks the same question aloud. What if the bread that fed Pittsburgh could free Italy? The OSS safe house smelled of yeast, garlic, and fear. Gino Rossi stood at a scarred oak table in the back room of his bakery, sleeves rolled high, forearms dusted white like a ghost. Major Tompkins laid out the ingredients the way a surgeon lays out scalpels. 55-gallon drum of Composition B, pale yellow, waxy, smells faintly of almonds. 100-pound sacks of Caputo 00 flour, milled in Naples before the war, now rerouted through Algiers. 5-gallon tin of olive oil, extra virgin, for crust shine and to mask the plastique scent. 12 ounces of potassium chlorate, fine as powdered sugar, to boost the bang. 1 pint of black food coloring, detonator pencils, British made, time delay 30 minutes to 6 hours. Tompkins tapped the drum. This batch alone can drop 3 viaducts on Highway 65, but if the Germans sniff it, you're done. Your bakery becomes a crater. Gino measured with the same copper scales his nonno used for wedding cakes. Ratio, per OSS Field Manual 44 OSSITALY, 3 parts. Composition B to 7 parts, flour by volume. Need 12 minutes, no more, or the RDX separates and sweats. Proof at 98 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. The explosive stays stable up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Bake at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 22 minutes. Crust must reach 1/8 inch thickness to survive parachute impact at 18 feet per second. He worked in silence, the only sound the slap of dough and the tick of the oven thermometer. Maria watched from the doorway, apron clutched in her fists. Remember the wedding of 38? Gino said without looking up. Nonna said the secret to perfect pain was love in every fold. Tonight, the love is for Luca and every kid hiding in those mountains. First test loaf. Gino hollowed a cavity the size of a softball, packed the plastique tight, sealed with a flour water paste. He scored the top with a razor, 3 slashes, OSS code for safe, into the oven. The room held its breath. At 18 minutes, a faint almond whiff, normal. At 22, the crust cracked golden. Tompkins cracked it open with a bayonet, core intact, fuse pencil nestled like a vanilla bean. Beautiful, the major whispered. Now scale it. By March, Gino's bakery ran 2 shifts. Day shift, 600 honest loaves for GIs at Indiantown Gap. Night shift, 300 weapon loaves, crated in pine boxes stenciled alimentary paste, U.S. Army. Each crate weighed 48 pounds, 24 loaves, 12 pounds TNT, 4 crates per pallet, 16 pallets per C-47. 1 plane, 1 night, 1 sector of the Gothic line starved of supplies. The Gothic line, Weckstein calls it Hitler's last rampart in Italy, stretched 200 miles across the Apennines, from La Spezia to Pesaro. 2,376 machine gun nests, 479 anti-tank positions, 2,375 miles of barbed wire. Kesselring bragged it would take the Allies 6 months to crack. Partisans with Gino's bread cracked it in 6 weeks. Gino kept a map pinned behind the flour bins. red pins for every confirmed drop. April 9th, 1944. 42 loaves to the Stella Rossa Brigade near Bologna, rail bridge number 17 gone by dawn. April 14th. 38 loaves to the Garibaldi near Florence. Convoy of 22 trucks flaming on the Futa Pass. Each pin a prayer answered. But the math cut both ways. One mistimed fuse, one sweaty batch, and the bakery and Maria, the boys, gone. Gino slept with a 38 under the proofing cloths. Every sunrise, he kissed the crucifix above the oven and whispered, "Deliver us from evil and from overproofing." Chapter 4. First batch, baking the bombs, 7 minutes plus 15 seconds, 1,065 words. Loop, smell the crust, hear the boom. April 21st, 1944, moonless, perfect for drops. Gino loaded the final pallet himself. 64 crates, 1,536 loaves, 768 pounds of high explosive. The C-47 Miss Pittsburgh waited at Pomeroy Field, engines idling like impatient dragons. Pilot, Captain Aldo Ray, Italian-American from Philly, voice like Sinatra on gravel. "Rossi, your bread better rise at 2,000 feet. Takeoff at 23:17, over the Atlantic, then the Tyrrhenian, black water below. Gino rode jump seat, clutching a rosary carved from olive wood. At 1:45, green light over the drop zone, Monte Sole, 40 miles south of Bologna. Partisan signal, 3 bonfires in a triangle, Morse for hungry. Static crackled. Packages away. Chutes blossomed white, 300 loaves drifting like lethal snowflakes. Gino watched through the open door, wind whipping tears from his eyes, impact, soft thuds in the pine needles. Partisans swarmed, knives flashing, crates open in seconds. One boy, no older than Gino's son, bit into a loaf, spat flour, laughed when he found the yellow heart. Radio confirmation at 2:10. Bread received. Bridge 19 sings tonight. Back in Pittsburgh by dawn, Gino opened the oven to honest loaves for the breakfast rush. The smell of anise and semolina masked the cordite on his hands. Maria met him at the door, eyes searching. "Luca?" Gino nodded. One step closer. That night, OSS intercept. German radio frantic. "Supply convoy destroyed. Bread crates exploded on contact. Investigate bakeries." Gino burned the map, scattered the ashes in the dough trough. The hunt was on, May 1944. The Gothic line is no longer a line on a map. It is a living scar across Italy's spine. From the marble quarries of Carrara to the muddy flats of the Po, Kesselring has poured concrete and steel into 2,376 machine gun nests, 479 anti-tank gun positions, and enough barbed wire to fence Pennsylvania twice. Weckstein writes, "The partisans owned the night, but daylight belonged to the Wehrmacht until the bread started falling." Gino's bakery now runs like a munitions plant with a crucifix on the wall. Production: 1,200 weapon loaves per week. Each loaf, 2.6 pounds, composition B, 1.6 pounds bread. Total weekly yield, 1.5 tons of high explosive disguised as Sunday dinner. C-47s fly out of Brindisi every third night, call sign Panetteria. Flight log, 12th of May, 1944. Mission 47. Pilot, Captain Aldo Ray. Load, 1,536 loaves, 1,900 pounds TNT equivalent. Drop zone, Monte Sole, 1,200 meters elevation. Partisan reception, Stella Rossa Brigade, 180 fighters under Comandante Lupo. Gino rides again, observer seat, stomach in his throat. Over the Adriatic, Flak bursts stitch black flowers across the stars. One burst rocks the plane. A crate shifts. Loaves tumble. Aldo banks hard. "Hold the bread, Rossi!" Gino wedges his body against the pallet. Flour clouding the cabin like holy incense. Green light at 2:03. Shoots bloom. 300 white mushrooms drifting down the mountain. From the door, Gino sees bonfires wink 3 times. Safe. Partisans swarm like ants on sugar. A girl no older than 14 slices open a loaf, pulls the yellow heart, kisses it. Radio crackle. Pane ricevuto. Ponti 23 e 24 in programma per l'alba. Dawn confirmation. Bridge 23 over the Reno River, wooden trestles 80 feet high, collapses at 5:17. Bridge 24, stone arch near Grisana, drops at 5:42. German convoy of 38 trucks, 2 Panther tanks, 400 troops, rerouted into a box canyon. Partisans with Gino's bread and captured MG-42s turn the canyon into a shooting gallery. Enemy losses: 180 killed in action, 22 vehicles, 3 tons of 88mm ammo. Partisan losses: 4 wounded, 0 dead. Back in Pittsburgh, Gino lands to a hero's welcome nobody can acknowledge. Maria meets him with espresso and silence. The boys ask why Papa smells like airplane glue. He ruffles their hair. Just helping Nona's cousins with dinner. By June, the numbers stagger even OSS analysts. 42 missions flown. 64,512 loaves dropped. 33,566 pounds of explosive delivered. 47 bridges destroyed. 112 supply trucks, 19 locomotives. 7 German divisions, 105,000 men, forced to guard their own rear instead of the front. Weckstein's ledger: the bread campaign shortened the Italian campaign by 41 days. Gino pins a new map. Red pins now a bleeding wound across the Apennines. Each pin a story whispered in mountain huts, the night the bread took out a field kitchen. 200 SS troops eating breakfast when the oven exploded. The loaf that rolled under a staff car carrying General Fridolin von Senger und Etterlin. Car flipped, General hospitalized with a broken ego. But success breeds danger. German radio traffic spikes. Achtung, feindliche Brotlieferungen. Jede Bäckerei kontrollieren, every bakery in northern Italy raided. Gino's cover thins like overproofed dough. Chapter 6. The Cost. Raid on the bakery. 5 minutes, 725 words. Loop. The oven that fed freedom now feeds the fire. July 3, 1944. Dawn raid. Gino is pulling the last honest batch when the door splinters. 6 Gestapo in leather coats, Lugers drawn. "Rossi, mitkommen!" Maria screams from the stairs. The boys freeze with jam on their faces. They tear the place apart. Flour bins dumped. Yellow dust of plastique swirls like pollen. Oven gutted. Bricks pried. Fuses found. Crates in the cellar cracked open. Loaves sliced. Cores exposed. Interrogation room. Fort Indiantown Gap Stockade. OSS cover intact, but barely. Lights in the face. Names of pilots. Drop zones. Partisan contacts. Gino gives nothing but recipes. 3 cups flour, 1 cup water, pinch of courage. They break 2 fingers. He thinks of Luca's last letter. "If they take you, cousin, remember the bread rises anyway." Maria smuggled in by OSS. 1 visit, 5 minutes. She presses a tiny loaf into his hand. Real bread, no explosive. Inside, a razor blade baked into the crust. Gino swallows it with communion wine. That night, he saws the cell window bars. Escape route. Coal chute to the Allegheny River. swims downstream, surfaces miles away in a Polish neighborhood. OSS safe house by sunrise. The bakery is ashes by noon. Gestapo torch. Insurance papers list oven malfunction. Maria and the boys relocated to a farm outside Erie. Gino goes underground, new identity. Uncle Gino, traveling salesman. But the bread keeps baking. From a borrowed church basement in Youngstown, he teaches 3 Italian-American bakers the recipe. Production never stops. April 25, 1945. Bologna falls. The Gothic line cracks like stale ciabatta. Partisans, 200,000 strong, Weckstein's final count, march down the Via Emilia waving loaves like banners. Gino Rossi, hidden in the Youngstown church basement, hears the news on a crackling BBC broadcast. Stella Rossa Brigade enters city center. Civilians throw flowers and bread. He drops the rolling pin. Flour clouds the air like surrender smoke. 2 days later, a jeep painted with the OSS Eagle skids to a stop outside the Erie farm. Major Tompkins, now colonel, steps out, thinner, eyes older. "Gino, your cousins are waiting. Pack light. The war's over, but the ovens aren't." Flight to Naples on a liberated DC-3. Gino carries 1 honest suitcase and 1 crate. 12 loaves, no explosive, just rosemary and sea salt. Landing at Capodichino, the air smells of orange blossoms and cordite. Luca meets him on the tarmac, gaunt, bearded, but alive. They embrace without words. Luca pulls a scorched crust from his pocket. Kept this from the last drop. Tasted like home. The Reunion Bakery, a bombed-out shell in Marzabotto, roof half gone, oven miraculously intact. Gino fires it with olive wood scavenged from partisan camps. First batch, 200 loaves for the liberated village. Children line up, eyes wide. An old woman kisses the crust. Pane di libertà, finalmente. OSS citation, read aloud by Tompkins under a tricolor flag. Civilian operative Gino Rossi, 1,200 tons of disguised explosives delivered, 147 infrastructure targets destroyed, 41 days shaved from the Italian campaign. Medal of Freedom withheld for security. Gratitude eternal. Gino shrugs. "I just followed Nona's recipe." That night, around a table of scarred oak, partisans tell stories. The loaf that rolled into a German latrine exploded at dawn. 40 SS troops diving for cover in their own mess. The wedding cake drop, 3 tiers, bottom layer pure TNT, detonated under a staff car on the couple's honeymoon route. Laughter echoes off the ruins. Gino raises a glass of grappa to the bread that rose against tyranny. Chapter 8. Back to Pittsburgh. The smell of victory, 4 minutes plus 30 seconds, 670 words. Loop. Every Sunday, the oven still whispers secrets. June 1945. Pittsburgh's Victory Day parade snakes down Liberty Avenue. Gino rides in an open Packard, Maria beside him, boys waving tiny flags. The new Rossi's Bakery, bigger brick neon sign, opens on Penn Avenue. First customer, a GI who recognizes the smell. "Sir, your bread saved my platoon outside Florence." Gino slices a loaf, hands it over warm. "On the house. Tell your kids the crust has a story." Post-war life settles like proofing dough. Sons grow, one becomes a baker, one an engineer. Dad taught us ratios matter. Grandkids learn to knead on the same marble counter, hearing whispers of the war loaves. Gino speaks at schools. Courage isn't loud. It's 22 minutes at 425 degrees, praying the crust holds. The OSS file declassifies in 1972. Weckstein's book dedicates a chapter, The Baker of Bologna. Gino signs copies with flour on his fingers, for the 200,000 who never came home, and the bread that brought the rest back. Every Easter, he bakes colomba pasquale shaped like doves. Inside one, always one, a tiny note. Peace rises. At 88, in the old oven's glow, Gino teaches his great-granddaughter the fold. Love in every turn, Cara. That's the only explosive we need now. Here's the real recipe, straight from Gino Rossi's notebook. Declassified, de-explosified. 3 cups flour, Caputo if you can. 1 cup warm water, 98 degrees Fahrenheit. 1 teaspoon yeast, courage. 1 teaspoon salt, memory. 1 tablespoon olive oil, hope. Knead 12 minutes. Proof 45. Bake 22. The math still works. 1 ordinary lifetime's quiet daring equals history rewritten. For every viewer over 50, your parents or grandparents carried stories like Gino's, folded into Sunday gravy, whispered over coffee. Comment below, what family recipe hid a war secret, like if bread beats bullets? Subscribe. Next week, the Texas nurse who sewed freedom into flags. Ring the bell. The oven's always warm,